Hello out there, my good bipartisan friends. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about federal funding. Is it partisan or bipartisan? I guess that would only matter to those who either get it or don't get it. But anyway, we're going to go on. A little disclosure. My wife is from West Virginia and her family still lives out there. So, the article that she shared with me is from Reuters, dated March 29th, 2025. The headline is Federal Funding Cuts Ripple Through the Heart of Trump Country, written by P.J. Hufstute. I hope I pronounced that right. Forgive me if I didn't. West Virginia residents voice frustration over funding cuts at Town Hall. Cuts impact small farmers in West Virginia where Trump won 70% of the votes. Trump cut $500 million program for food banks to buy local produce. Federal funds, on average, comprise about 1/3 of the state's annual spending. And it goes on. The phone rang over the whine of Trey Yates's butter churn. The person calling was polite, but the message was devastating. Mountaineer Food Bank was ending Yates's butter contract due to federal government's funding cuts. The next day, President Donald Trump signed a declaration celebrating National Agricultural Day, praising farmers and food makers like Yates. This guy's such a grifter. The article goes on, but the canceled contract with the federally funded food bank, one of only two in West Virginia, have been a lifeline for Yates's business. In that moment, Yates, 27 years of age, wasn't sure how much longer he could hold on. With his heart pounding, he called his father, John Yates, shocked that Trump's administration would take such an action. Okay, I'm going to pause here. If you really paid attention, you wouldn't be shocked. I mean, he campaigned that he was going to cut federal spending. So why is it a shocking or a surprise? But anyway, let's go on here. Quote, Dad, they're trying to bankrupt me, unquote, he said. Yates, a registered independent, said he did not vote for Trump. Along the winding back roads and Appalachian hollers of West Virginia, in a state where Trump won 70% of the votes cast last November, his administration's vow to cut back on government spending. Yates's lost sales stemmed from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's cancellation of the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement program, which was due to provide about $500 million this year to food banks. Trump's administration also rolled out cuts to other federal funding that has kept small agriculture businesses like Yates's Greenbrier dairy churning. Also, orchard owner Natasha Zoe, a retired Marine, is waiting on grant funds to reimburse her for building a small cannery near the town of Alderson that will allow fruit farmers to make and sell syrups and juices. And money that help food banks and schools buy Farmer Johnny Spangler's blueberries and popcorn in Linside have been cut. After he scaled up his plantings and bought a bigger truck to meet the demand. From grants from the USDA and the Department of Congress to funds from the Small Business Administration, an intricate web of economic support from Washington has for decades pumped money into rural America. Much of it has now been frozen, cut back or even eliminated, including at least $1.5 billion in USDA funds for schools and food banks. The federal government is the engine of money while the states are the distributors of money, said James L. Perry, professor emeritus at Indiana University, who studies federal grant administration. Quote, "This has become more pronounced as the federal budget has grown." Unquote. The cuts now force states to come up with funding from their own budgets or shutter programs altogether, Perry said. States like West Virginia, where more than half of the $19.2 billion annual budget for fiscal year 2025 relies on federal funds, are particularly hit hard. A pass-through in the past, the article goes on. The practice of the U.S. government granting either land or money to state and local governments dates back more than 200 years as a way to promote, which led to significantly expanded funding into education, housing, and food access. Today, pass-through funding allows federal agencies to tap into local expertise and knowledge, as well as help the federal government keep its own staffing levels down, said Colleen Heflin, a professor of public administration at the International Affairs at Syracuse University. In fiscal year 2024, the U.S. spent about $1.1 trillion on pass-through grants to state and local governments, or about 16% of the federal government's total spending, according to an analysis by the USA Facts of data from the Office of Management and Budget and the Treasury Department. During his presidential campaign, Trump repeatedly vowed to cut government waste and spending and said he supported American farmers. Quote, "He will ensure farmers have the support they need to feed the world," Anna Kelly, White House Deputy Press Secretary, said in a statement to Reuters. USDA is reviewing all programs for which payments have been placed on hold, and Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins is working to make determinations as quickly as possible, an agency spokesman said in a statement. Pass-throughs are a particularly effective approach when it comes to agriculture, Heflin said. The Patrick Leahy Farm to School Grant Program and the local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program, which were both cut, required that money be spent on purchases either within the state or on a certain radius of the delivery destination. The White House said the LFPA, which began in 2021, was a COVID-era program that was being sunsetted. Overall, federal funds, on the average, comprise about one-third of states' annual spending, according to the most recently available U.S. Census Bureau data. In addition to the cuts, a massive government spending bill enacted on March 15, 2025, has resulted in West Virginia organizations not getting nearly $109 million in funds that were sought by the state's congressional delegation, said Kelly Allen, executive director of the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy. That included $500,000 for youth nutrition in the state capital of Charleston. The cuts are poised to hit the southern part of the state, where Yates lives and works, harder because of its higher concentration of low-income people, Allen said. Bridging the generations. Trey Yates is 4 generations deep in the dirt of agriculture, the article says. His butter and cheese feed hungry school children and the hard-pressed in a place where a decent paycheck is as rare as rain in a summer drought. Yates's grandfather, and father all worked at or ran dairies. His father also worked in a local food plant, which bottled vinegar and apple butter. Yates bridged the generations. The butter making came first, in fits and starts. Tapping into schools and food banks just made sense. Those are two of the biggest food markets in the state. Feeding kids also comes from a place of memory. His mom, Stephanie, packed him an extra lunch for friends without a parent or food at home. Church ladies delivered boxes of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to the school for the football team. Quote, "Everyone's got a sandwich," Yates said. "Some needed more." Unquote. On a recent spring morning, Yates's delivery route took him back to the same lunchroom. Swinging the cafeteria open at the Meadow Bridge Regional School, the scent of freshly baked rolls, the dough made with Yates's butter, warmed the air. Though Yates lost the contract with the Mountaineer Food Bank, his sales to Fayette County schools are secure for now. The director of school nutrition, Andrew Pence, said he had other funding to buy Yates's butter. But steady orders from one school district are not enough to keep Yates afloat. Some of his other school customers have told him they can stretch budgets through this year, but purchases for summer food programs and beyond could be at risk. Okay, this is where I take a break, because I'm going to tell you everybody something. Corporations have gone into our states, mainly rural areas, and decimated local commerce. Now you have to go to Walmart or Kroger, some outrageous, huge corporations that then take those profits and divide them amongst their investors, regardless of where they're at. Very little bit of that money stays in your local community. But I will continue. The bills are stacking up. Even before Trump took office, Yates' bills were stacking up. His parents had pledged their home to the bank in 2016 to help him buy the two-story building that became a small creamery, the butter churn and milk pasteurizer. He owes money to dairy farmer Mike Fogus, 68. Fogus agreed in 2014, when Yates was just 17, to sell every drop of his cow's milk to the young man if he achieved his dream of opening a creamery. He liked the idea of helping his friend's son, who cut his teeth, in the 4-H youth development program showing Maybelle, the Jersey cow, at summer fairs. Fogus allowed Yates's cows to graze on his pastures and be milked along with his own herd. It was supposed to be a win for the older dairyman, whose business was too small to make a profit selling his milk to the bigger processors. But as Yates struggled, a chill has crept in between the two men. "You gonna get me that check?" Fogus asked Yates when the butter maker drove into the farm recently for a milk pickup. Yates nodded as the truck bounced back up the muddy road. Fogus eyed Yates's cows and said to himself, "Collateral on the hoof." Yates said he has $10,000 in delinquent invoices from the local schools, who have yet to pay for the butter delivered. About 1/3 of his school customers have reduced their regular orders. Quote, "I'm going to pay him back," Yates said. "The bank, Mike, everyone's going to get paid. If I have to liquidate everything, Everyone is going to get paid. Now back to the town hall. They ain't coming. Yates is not the only one who's angry. He strode through the Beckley Raleigh County Convention Center in Beckley on March 15th as the afternoon sunlight cast shadows across the polished floor. Volunteers at this town hall, hosted by local Democratic county officials, handed out booklets of the U.S. Constitution along with cookies. Organizers said they sent certified letters to invite U.S. Senators Shelley Moore Capito, thank you, dear, and Jim Justice, as well as U.S. Representative Carol Miller and Riley Moore, to the event. But none had appeared. I wonder why. Senator Capito, who is monitoring federal funding for schools and food banks, did not receive a formal invitation to the event. A spokesman told Reuters. Well, let's back up a little bit. It says there that the organizers of this town hall sent certified letters to invite these people. But we'll go on. Her office said that staff are communicating directly with several constituents. Just find that hard to believe. Representative Moore declined to comment. Representative Miller and Senator Justice did not respond to requests for comment. There were Republicans there, along with independents and Democrats. As a sound man fidgeted with the microphone at the front of the room, someone in the back called out, "They ain't coming, are they?" Volunteer shook his head. Nope. Instead, for 2 hours, people addressed pictures of their government representatives. I guess that's better than cardboard cutouts, but I regress. Some cried, others yelled. Hunger came up time and again. Yates hunched over his knees, frowning and cracking his knuckles, eventually stood up and walked to the microphone. He had no notes, he said later. Quote, "They're taking fresh local foods out of our kids' mouths and those facing hunger," Yates said. "I've never been political until now. If they need a new face of agriculture in this state, they dug me out of the woodwork." It's very important for people to stay engaged in politics. In fact, it's your civic duty. And when you're not engaged, stuff like this catches you by surprise. So pay attention and get out there and vote. And we'll talk about that in a later video. Anyway, the article goes on. A cheer went up loud and deep, filled with something close to desperation and hope, all stirred together. Desperation and hope stirred together. Sounds like a fine meal to serve up. Anyway, the importance of this is because it is so important to stay engaged and pay attention to what's happening in your politics. Your voice doesn't matter unless you know how to make it matter or what to make it matter over. So with all that said, I want to move on to this next article. Musk claims otherwise, but the Trump administration spending is on track to surpass Biden's, the headline says. No surprise. The U.S. Treasury is on pace to spend 7.4% more in 2025 than last year. Elon Musk doubled down on his pledge to cut government spending by $1 trillion, an amount that would slash the federal budget deficit in half, and, if implemented, put the U.S. much closer to stabilizing the growth of its debt burden relative to the size of the economy. Quote, "Our goal is to reduce the deficit by $1 trillion, Musk said. at a Fox News during Thursday evening made-for-television event, adding that he hoped to reduce overall federal spending by 15% by eliminating waste and fraud. A goal, he said, seems really quite achievable. He pointed to a number of examples of wasteful spending, including a survey that Musk claimed was done for the Interior Department at a cost of $830 million to collect Americans' opinions of national parks. Musk said that the same survey could have been done by another vendor for just $10,000. The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, headed by the Tesla, or Tesler, Trump calls it, CEO, says on its website that it has saved $130 billion so far, which amounts to about $2 billion in savings per day since President Donald Trump's inauguration. Show me the evidence. That's about half of the $4 billion a day that Musk has pledged to cut in his interview with Fox News' Bret Baier. It's difficult for reporters and analysts to confirm any of his claims, though. Erroneous claims and examples of claimed savings disappearing from the list of purported cost-saving cutbacks have not been documented. DOGE made it particularly challenging to fact-check its assertions when it removed federal identification numbers in its website source code that could help outsiders, bipartisan people, identify specifically with what grants and contracts the agency is referring to. That makes it difficult, if not impossible, to know the vendors of the government has contracted with and whether the government is actually saving the amount of money DOGE is asserting that it has. The largest savings DOGE has laid claim to is a canceled $1.9 trillion contract for IT modernization. But the contractor that was awarded the money said last month that the award was actually canceled in November when Joe Biden was president. And there remain claims on the so-called department's website that are incorrect. The largest savings asserted by DOGE and Musk is the canceled $1 million contract. And as I stated, the contractor awarded the money told the New York Times last month that the award was actually canceled in November under President Joe Biden. It's not uncommon for federal outlays to grow year by year along with the economy, but the government is currently operating under a continuing budget resolution that largely locks in spending levels signed into law by Biden last year. By comparison, federal spending at the end of the first quarter in 2024 was on track to be 1.6% lower than the prior year, though overall spending ended up 3% higher for the full year in 2024 as compared to 2023. Wendy Edelberg of the Hamilton Project said, "Most of the cuts they have talked about are pretty small bone, and I think that's a major takeaway. You would expect, given the rhetoric, to see a big decrease relative to last year," said Edelberg, former chief economist and Congressional Budget Office and director of the Hamilton Project, told MarketWatch. So a lot of the cuts cannot be proven. That's my takeaway. But what's interesting is another article that I read today. dated March 3rd, 2025, by the Patriot News Penn Live. The article starts out, Donald Trump and Elon Musk have been busy laying off federal workers and slashing government spending. But one thing that the president apparently doesn't mind spending taxpayer money on is, you guessed it, his golf game. There is a long-time common misconception, reports, that it does not cost taxpayers for the president to play at his own golf course. But in reality, it costs an incredible amount of money. How much, you ask? Well, according to a recent HuffPost story, taxpayers have to shell out an estimated $3,383,250 for each golf trip Trump makes to Florida. Trump stays at his resort during these trips and plays at his Trump's International Golf Course in West Palm Beach. And due to the frequency in which the president has played, the site estimated that meant that taxpayers paid out at least $10.7 million for the president to hit the links across the first month in his second term. And that total may be conservative because the cost is based on a 2019 report from the Government Accountability Office that broke down how much Trump's trips cost. And that report was based on 2017 prices. And those prices have obviously risen since then. Yeah, because, Trump pretty much destroyed the economy in his first term. So I'm sure we're going to see it happen again. So yes, it does cost to taxpayers a significant amount of money for Trump to golf, even at his own course. If we're talking $10 a month for Trump to go golfing at his golf resort, you're talking $120 million on the conservative estimate what taxpayers are paying this clown to go golf twice a month. But in a year's time, $120 million. Now, I would think that if this guy was really serious about cutting federal spending, he'd try to cut that back just a little bit. Maybe go spend a day golfing at his Bedminster golf course, which is closer. He wouldn't have to fly Air Force One. So in conclusion, I call federal spending bipartisan. It's good for us all. It creates vibrant local economies that keep local people working. So until then, stay bipartisan. And if you like my content, give me a thumbs up or even subscribe. Hit me with a comment. Let me know what you think. Is federal spending partisan or bipartisan? Thanks for listening. Until next video, have a great day.